Good morning. This is Pastor Jeff. I'm here to read the gospel reading and preach the sermon that I am going to be preaching for today, Sunday the 21st and Wednesday the 24th. It is the ninth Sunday after Pentecost. Our gospel reading is Gospel of Mark, chapter 6, verses 30 through 34, and then 53 through 56. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told them all they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourself and rest for a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure time even to eat. And they went away in a boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, because they were like a sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. When they had crossed over, they came to the land at Gennesaret and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized him and rushed around the whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to whatever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid in the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might even touch the fringe of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. The Gospel of the Lord. This morning, our lectionary gives us a split reading. We hear two stories. In between these two stories, there are two in-depth miracle stories. The two miracles that we miss are the feeding of the 5,000 and Jesus walking on water. As we engage with the text, I also think that there's a reminder that may be good for us. In verse 30, we hear that the disciples have gathered around Jesus and are telling him everything. Now, everything is the journey that they have been on. Earlier in chapter 6, Jesus had sent them out on a mission, and they have just returned. They are so excited and exhausted. Jesus knows that they must hit the pause button, and he is going to take them on a retreat to a desolate location. I am sure that the disciples were excited about the possibility of getting away and being with Jesus. They will have some alone time with him and share with him everything that they had experienced. This is the opportunity that they have been waiting for. Their batteries will be charged. As we all know, even the best laid out plans can change in an instant. And in our reading and in this story, today is no exception. Once again, the disciples will learn the hard truth that there is never an escape from the suffering of the world. Jesus and the disciples get on the boat and they begin their travel to an unnamed destination. The crowds see them leave and they take off on foot. They do so swiftly, and they beat Jesus and the disciples to the shoreline. I'm not sure how the disciples were feeling. That picture is not painted for us. Mark, once again, zeroed the spotlight in on Jesus. Jesus feels compassion for them. We may lose the depth in the translation. When Jesus is coming to the shore, there is a deep sympathy that is rumbling from his inner being. I believe that the individuals that ran swiftly had great needs that were needing to be met. This is the reason that they wanted to be on the shoreline when Jesus hit the beaches. They were desperate and had hope that he would alleviate their suffering. Most of them, most likely, were living a hard life. Their living situation had been denied the affordability of their being to be a well-being. Once again, the injustices of life was causing them to suffer. Their suffering grabbed Jesus, and Jesus had to do something. Thus, the retreat was put on pause, and Jesus ministered to the individuals on the beach. He ministered to them for a long time. Here a verse that we missed due to the split reading. When the disciples thought that this had gone on long enough, it was now quite late in the day, they interrupted. This week I was with this first short summary story for some time. I was wondering about our church. Maybe you can help me out. I am wondering what is happening in Sturgeon Bay and Door County that is causing sympathy to rumble inside of you. If I were to ask you, what are you seeing and witnessing that is causing deep compassion to stir up inside of you, what answer would you give? Jesus felt like they were a sheep without a shepherd, and he wanted to do something for them. This is another area that may cause us to pause and be challenged. Jesus is headed to a desolate location to be with his disciples. He pivots. It quickly becomes about those outside of his inner circle and not the inner circle. The people outside the church became more important than the people inside the church. I think many churches, even us, fall into this trap. We become inward focus instead of outward focus. When you take a look at most churches' ministry programs and budget, it remains inside of their walls instead of outside the walls. I think that we can learn a lot from Jesus. I think that this is somewhat of what we can reflect on from the first short story. Now let us turn our focus onto the second short story. The second short story is another trip on the lake. When Jesus arrives on the beach, there is another huge crowd. Jesus is a magnet. When we see individuals rushing to Jesus, we see Jesus bringing restoration and healing. When Jesus reaches out and touches the individuals, he makes an impact. He wants them to prosper in body, mind, and spirit. That is not all. He wants to connect them to the greater community. What can we as a church community do with that knowledge? How can we make sure that individuals know that we are concerned with their mind, body, and spirit? And what can we do to be so invested in our community that we can make sure that individuals in Sturgeon Bay are connected with the town and that they are seen, heard, and taken care of? Here's the crazy thing. The authorities were upset with Jesus because he took care of individuals. Jesus became known as a dangerous person because he was making connections and changes in the community that he went to and through. It did not matter where Jesus went. When he went to a deserted place, individuals flocked there. When he was taking a stroll on the shoreline, folks showed up. When he visited villages, the masses came out. Jesus quickly found out that when he gave support to the harassed and fed the hungry and healed the sick, consequences followed. I am sure that what I'm about to say will make it into my sermon next week as well, when we look at the feeding of the 5,000 and we welcome our youth back from the gathering. But I think that it is important to highlight again and again. We have 9 youth and 4 adults who traveled to the gathering, and here are the 5 themes that they explored in their main sessions. We are created to be brave, to show up with an open mind and heart, and willing to be challenged. We are created to be authentic, to bring our whole self and know that we are loved by our Creator. We are created to be free, to be transformed by the gospel, and we are created to be disruptive, to work for justice for all of our siblings. And we are created to be disciples, to be sent out into the world, to love our neighbor just as we are loved by God. If we, as a congregation, led our lives and ministries through this lens, there would be consequences. However, if we are brave enough to live into this lifestyle, we will see authentic change occur. But it is not an easy route to choose and to follow. Many times I have shared that the Gospel of Mark is becoming my favorite gospel and maybe book of the Bible. It has not always been that way, but I am beginning to appreciate his urgency. Elizabeth Webb says the urgency of the gospel and of the people's need for it are too great to waste any time. Maybe that is true of our church community too. The needs outside of our walls are too great. We cannot waste time. May we have the courage to go out into our community, shower them with love, and work for justice so all in our town can feel loved and be in a place where they are safe. Can Bayview be the place that people flock to? Because we are the ones who provide a place and space where their well-being occurs. Amen.